chosen one. You didn't find this moment by accident. You didn't press play randomly. And you're not here just because the algorithm pushed this video in front of you. Something deeper is happening, because there comes a season in a person's life when heaven begins to move quietly, and your spirit senses it long before your circumstances ever confirm it. And if you're listening to this right now, it's because something inside you already knows that a shift has begun, even if nothing on the outside looks different yet. And that's exactly how divine movement starts, not with noise, not with applause, not with instant results, but with an inner awareness that says, something is changing beneath the surface. And this season you are in right now is what many people misunderstand. It's called the silent season, and silence does not mean absence. It means preparation. It means activity happening where the eye cannot see, because when God moves first, He moves underground, just like a seed. Before anything ever breaks the surface, something has to crack open in the dark. And that's why this season feels strange to you. Because you may not have any major announcements, no visible breakthroughs, no public rewards. Yet deep inside you can feel that resistance is loosening. Doors that were sealed for years are beginning to soften, not by force, not by striving, but effortlessly. And opportunities that once passed you by are slowly turning around and finding their way toward you. And this matters because God saw every season where you sowed with no applause, every prayer that felt unanswered, every act of obedience that no one noticed, every time you stayed faithful when it would have been easier to quit. And now, without fanfare, without warning, He is reversing what once resisted you. But here's the danger. Most people miss this moment because they're waiting for noise. They're waiting for a dramatic sign. They're waiting for something loud enough to convince their mind. But divine provision rarely announces itself loudly. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, like a seed cracking open beneath the soil. And this is why Scripture says, "Be still, and know that I am God." Not because stillness is weakness, but because stillness is awareness. Because true blessings don't crash into your life. They arrive like the sunrise, slow, steady, and undeniable. The sun doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't explain itself. It simply rises, and everything else adjusts around it. And that is exactly what this season is asking of you, to adjust, not to rush, not to announce, not to force visibility, but to recognize that something sacred has begun, even if no one else can see it yet. And here's how you know you're in this silent season. Your desire to explain yourself is fading. You feel less need to prove, less urge to defend, less appetite for noise. Conversations that once excited you now feel shallow. Environments you once tolerated now feel restrictive. And it's not because you're becoming distant, it's because your spirit is becoming selective. And that selectiveness is protection. Because not everyone is ready to see what God is forming inside you. Some people were only comfortable with your struggle because it kept you small, because it made them feel secure. And when growth begins, even quietly, it exposes stagnation around you. And that exposure is uncomfortable, not because you did something wrong, but because light reveals what darkness prefers to hide. And God is not exposing others to shame them. He's exposing them to free you from cycles, from mindsets, from relationships that were never designed to contain what He's placing inside you. And this is why the instruction for this season is simple but powerful. Move quietly. Silence is not hiding. Silence is strategy. You don't announce a seed the moment it begins to sprout. You protect it, you water it, you guard it until it can withstand storms. Storms of jealousy, storms of misunderstanding, storms of opinions that have no authority over your assignment. And understand this clearly, while your life may feel quieter. On the outside, heaven is not silent. God is speaking louder than ever on the inside, shaping your character, refining your motives, sharpening your discernment, because many people can receive a blessing, but very few can manage it. Many can celebrate increase, but few can steward it. And God will never release something through you that will later destroy you, which is why this season feels different. You are being prepared not just for provision, but for precision, not just for more, but for weight, for responsibility, for calling. And that's why you may feel pulled toward privacy, toward stillness, toward less explanation and more obedience, because this is the season where roots grow deeper than branches, where foundations are strengthened before structures are revealed. And if you rush this part, if you force visibility too soon, you risk exposing something that is not yet fortified, because energy follows attention. And when you draw attention to something sacred before it's ready, you invite pressure. It was never meant to carry yet, but when you stay grounded, when you stay quiet, when you stay aligned, you give heaven room to finish its work and let this settle in your spirit. This silence you are experiencing is not delay, it is development. It is not absence, it is alignment. It is not punishment, it is protection. God is teaching you how to rise without noise, how to walk with quiet authority, how to carry weight without needing validation. Because what is coming into your life is not ordinary, and before it becomes visible, it must become stable. Before it becomes public, it must become pure. And that is why heaven whispers. Before it shouts, that is why God works underground, before he works on the surface. Because when the moment comes for you to rise, you won't need to announce it. Your fruit will speak, your peace will testify, and your consistency will explain everything your mouth never has to. Chosen one, hear this carefully, because this is where many people misunderstand what's happening in their life the moment things begin to open, the moment resistance breaks, the moment opportunities start showing up. That moment is not the finish line, it is the battlefield, because in the kingdom, manifestation is not your reward, it is your proving ground. And this is why so many people fall right after breakthrough, not before it. Because when you were in lack, the enemy attacked you through discouragement, but when increase arrives, the attack changes form. It no longer looks like opposition, it looks like opportunity. It no longer sounds like rejection, it sounds like applause. And this is dangerous if you're not aware, because not every open door is divine, not every invitation is aligned, and not everyone celebrating you is assigned to you. And God is watching closely in this season, not to see how fast you move, but to see how wisely you discern, because blessing attracts warfare, not because blessing is evil, but because blessing carries light, and light reveals things that darkness would rather keep hidden. And this is why your progress will suddenly make some people uncomfortable, not because you did something wrong, but because your obedience exposes what they postponed. Your growth highlights their stagnation, and instead of celebrating, some will compete. Instead of supporting, some will compare. And instead of protecting, some will try to access what they never helped build. And here is the trap. If you are not grounded, you will mistake attention for alignment. You will confuse opportunity with instruction, and you will step into doors that look good but drain your peace. And God is saying in this season, slow down. Just because you can does not mean you should. Just because it's available does not mean it's approved. And just because it's profitable does not mean it's purposeful. Because increase without discernment becomes distraction. And distraction is one of the enemy's favorite tools against the chosen. Not to destroy you quickly, but to dilute you slowly, to scatter your focus, to drain your energy, to fill your schedule while emptying your spirit. And this is why some people get blessed and then suddenly feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected because they said yes to everything except the one voice that mattered most. And hear this truth clearly. Money does not corrupt. It reveals success, does not change who you are. It exposes who you have always been. Whatever was hiding in your heart will rise when increase arrives. Pride will inflate insecurity, will whisper louder impatience, will push you to rush, but humility will anchor you. Gratitude will steady you, and discipline will protect you. And this is the fork in the road where many fall because they prayed for provision but never prepared for exposure. They asked God to bless their hands but never allowed Him to cleanse their motives. And when the blessing came, it became too heavy for their character to carry. And that is why divine delay is not rejection, it is protection. God is not withholding from you. He is shielding you from premature promotion, because promotion before preparation does not elevate it, destroys. And your waiting season was not wasted. Every closed door was a classroom. Every setback was training. Every silent night was shaping something inside you that money alone could never produce. Discernment, discipline, humility. And now that the doors are opening, your warfare has shifted. The enemy no longer attacks through lack. He attacks through distraction, through counterfeit connections. People who speak like friends, but act like parasites. People who want access to your resources, but have no respect for your assignment. People who clap publicly, but compete privately. And if you are not anchored, you will try to please everyone, explain everything, and prove that you deserve what God freely gave you. And that urge to prove is the first sign that you're drifting. Because real authority does not argue, it moves. Real power does not boast, it builds. And God is saying, do not explain your growth. Do not defend your elevation. Do not fight battles I never assigned you. Move quietly, because silence is not weakness. It is authority under control. It is strength that does not need validation. And this is where separation begins, not as punishment, but as protection. Because not everyone who walked with you in the valley can handle you on the mountain. Some people only know how to relate to your pain, not your purpose. And when you rise, they don't know where to place you anymore. And instead of adjusting, they resist. And God says, let them go. Not with bitterness, not with drama, but with peace, because your assignment is too heavy to carry unnecessary weight. And this is why, in this season, the first instruction of blessing is rarely celebrate. It is separate from noise, separate from pressure, separate from opinions that have no authority over your calling. Because if you celebrate too early, you expose what is still forming. Energy follows attention, and when attention lands on something sacred before it is fortified, it invites envy, interference, and unnecessary warfare. and many chosen ones lost momentum, not because God withdrew, but because they announced too soon. They shouted victory before the foundation settled. They showed the harvest before the roots grew deep, and when storms came, what could have stood firm snapped under exposure. But God is teaching you a different way. He is teaching you how to advance without noise, how to discern without fear, how to say no without guilt. Because in this season, your peace is more valuable than your progress. Your clarity is more important than your speed, and your obedience matters more than your options, because the blessing is here. But the test has just begun, and how you handle this stage will determine whether what God released can remain, because abundance without discipline is temporary, favor without humility is fragile, and the chosen are not just those who receive blessing, they are those who survive. Steward it and remain aligned when everything around them says, rush, flex, and prove. Chosen one, this is where the path becomes narrow and the wisdom becomes rare. Because what God is teaching you in this season is not something most people are prepared to understand. It is called quiet prosperity. And quiet prosperity does not look impressive at first glance. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't compete. And that's exactly why it lasts. Because there are two types of wealth moving through the world right now: loud wealth and divine wealth. Loud wealth needs to be seen. It needs validation. It needs proof. It flexes. It posts. It performs. It measures success by applause and attention. But divine wealth moves differently. It is disciplined. It is structured. It is rooted. And it understands something. Loud. Wealth never learns that increase without order becomes chaos. And this is why many people rise quickly and fall just as fast. Not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lacked structure. Because money without discipline leaks favor, without boundaries collapses, and blessing without wisdom becomes a burden. And God is not building you to shine for a moment. He is building you to stand for a lifetime. And that requires a different mindset, because divine wealth is not about how much you can receive. It is about how much you can carry without losing yourself. And this is why God often trains the chosen in silence, because silence reveals maturity. Silence exposes motive. Silence tests whether you can hold increase without needing attention, because if you need to be seen to feel secure, money will amplify that insecurity. But if your identity is anchored, wealth becomes a tool, not a master. And hear this clearly. Money is never the goal in the kingdom. It is the servant. It exists to fund purpose, not identity. And when this shift happens inside you, something powerful changes. You stop chasing lifestyle and start building legacy. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. You stop spending to impress and start investing to impact. And this is the difference between people who touch wealth and those who sustain it. Because sustainability is not built on excitement. It is built on systems, habits, and restraint. Things. The world rarely celebrates, but heaven deeply values. And this is why divine prosperity often looks boring to people who crave stimulation, because it prioritizes consistency over hype, order over impulse, obedience over opinion. And God trusts some people with more, not because they are louder or more talented, but because they are more disciplined. They understand boundaries, they understand timing, they understand that not every opportunity deserves access, because opportunity without discernment becomes distraction, and Distraction is one of the fastest ways to drain a blessing. And this is where many misunderstand restraint. They think saying no is fear, but in reality, saying no is wisdom protecting alignment, because not every deal is clean, not every partnership is pure, and not every open door leads to the right destination. And if you don't learn how to filter access, your blessing will become crowded, drained, and diluted. Because some people don't want to support your vision. They want to attach to your provision. They don't want responsibility. They want benefit. And if you're not careful, you'll begin carrying people God never assigned to your journey, and that weight will slow you down, exhaust you, and confuse your focus. But quiet prosperity solves this problem, because when you stop announcing, only the aligned remain. When you stop explaining, only the intentional stay. And this is where boundaries become holy. Saying no becomes worship, and restraint becomes obedience. And this discipline is what separates people who rise temporarily from those who last generationally, because the chosen are not just called to receive. They are called to steward, to manage, to multiply without corruption. And this requires a new way of thinking. Every dollar becomes a decision. Every increase becomes a question. What is this for? Who is this meant to help? What is this meant to build? And when you live this way, money loses its emotional power over you. It no longer defines your worth. It no longer controls your mood. It no longer feeds comparison, because your identity is anchored. And when identity is secure, prosperity brings peace instead of pressure, clarity instead of confusion, order instead of anxiety. And this is one of the clearest signs that your blessing is from God. It brings alignment, not chaos, because counterfeit prosperity excites the flesh, but drains the soul. While divine prosperity stabilizes your life from the inside out, your decisions become measured, your reactions become calmer, your generosity becomes intentional, and your peace becomes untouchable. And people will notice this difference. They'll wonder why you're not louder, why you're not showing more, why you're not competing. And the answer is simple. You don't need to announce what God is sustaining, because fruit speaks louder than words. Consistency testifies louder than claims, and peace reveals more than any display ever could. And Scripture confirms this when it says, "Let another praise you, and not your own mouth." Because self-promotion weakens authority, but quiet confidence strengthens it. And chosen one, understand this deeply. Heaven is not impressed by how much you make. It is attentive to how you manage. Heaven does not count dollars. It reads discipline, it watches patterns, it observes habits, because habits reveal maturity. And this is why some people receive a windfall and lose it within years, while others grow steadily and never collapse. One chased visibility, the other built structure. One reacted emotionally, the other responded with wisdom. And God is training you to be the second, the builder, the steward, the one who understands that wealth must be carried with reverence, because money amplifies who you already are. And if your heart is not grounded, increase will expose it. But if your spirit is anchored, wealth becomes a weapon for good, a tool for restoration, a resource for impact. And this is where generosity enters. Not loud generosity, not performative giving, but holy generosity. Quiet acts of obedience that heaven records, even when no one else sees, helping without posting, giving without credit, sowing without strings. Because generosity is not about recognition, it is about alignment. And when you give, like this, something supernatural happens. Your wealth stays clean, It does not rot with pride. It does not poison your spirit. It remains a channel instead of becoming a cage. And this is why God whispers instructions to you in this season: where to give, where to invest, where to hold back, where to walk away. And the world may call it intuition, but you know it is divine guidance, because quiet prosperity sharpens your hearing, while noise dulls it, applause distracts it, and comparison corrupts it. And this is why Jesus withdrew after miracles. He did not linger in praise. He returned to communion, because applause is loud, but purpose is quiet. And if you linger too long where people praise you, you will miss where God is trying to lead you next. And this season is not about stopping your growth. It is about sustaining it. It is about learning how to move with nobility instead of noise, discipline instead of display, wisdom instead of rush. Because the ones who last are not the ones who shine the brightest. They are the ones who stay rooted, the deepest. And this is the mark of quiet prosperity. When your life becomes stable, your emotions become governed, your habits become disciplined, and your peace becomes proof that God is leading you. Not pressure, not comparison, not the need to be seen, but alignment and chosen one. Divine wealth does not need to be announced. It is recognized. And this is the kind of prosperity God is building in you. Now not loud, not rushed, not fragile, but quiet, disciplined and unshakable, chosen one. This is the part of the journey that almost no one prepares you for, because as God begins to elevate you, something subtle but undeniable starts to happen. Your circle begins to change, not because you became arrogant, not because you think you're better, but because your capacity has shifted, and what once fit no longer does. And this season is often called separation, but separation is misunderstood. It's not rejection, it's protection. It's not isolation, it's alignment. Because not everyone who walked with you in one season is equipped to walk with you in the next. And this is where many people get confused and hurt, because they expect everyone to celebrate their growth. But the truth is, your progress will make some people uncomfortable. Not because you did something wrong, but because your obedience highlights what they avoided. Your discipline exposes their excuses, and your movement reveals their stagnation. And instead of adjusting, some people resist. Instead of supporting, they compare. And instead of protecting, they compete. And this is why God often begins to narrow your circle right before expansion, because elevation without separation leads to contamination. And contamination always drains what God is trying to build. And hear this clearly. Some people were only comfortable with your struggle because it kept you accessible, because it kept you relatable, because it made them feel secure. And when you begin to grow, even quietly, your light shines on places they don't want to examine. And that light feels like pressure. Not because you're attacking them, but because growth always creates contrast. And God is saying in this season, don't take it personally. Don't internalize the distance. Don't fight to keep access open. Where grace has already lifted, because separation is not punishment. It is preparation. It is God removing you from environments that can no longer sustain what He is placing inside you. And this can feel lonely, because familiar conversations start to feel shallow. Familiar spaces start to feel tight, and familiar people start to feel distant. But this is not loss. This is transition. God is clearing space, not to deprive you, but to protect you, because your assignment is expanding. And and expanded assignments require lighter loads. And here is where maturity is tested. Can you let go without bitterness? Can you move forward without explanation? Can you grow without needing approval? Because the urge to explain is often a sign that you're still seeking permission, and God is calling you into a season where you no longer need permission to obey. And this is why silence becomes your strength, because silence is not weakness. It is authority under control. It is confidence that does not need validation. It is growth that does not need an audience. And when you stop explaining, you stop bleeding energy, because explanations are expensive. They drain clarity. They invite opinions, and they open doors God never assigned. And this is why some people lose momentum in their breakthrough season, not because God stopped moving, but because they kept everyone informed who was never meant to be involved. And God is teaching you to protect access, because access is sacred. Not everyone deserves proximity. Not everyone needs to know your plans. Not everyone is entitled to your next move. And this is not pride. This is wisdom, because exposure before preparation invites unnecessary warfare, jealousy, misunderstanding, and interference. And many people have sabotaged their own growth by oversharing too soon, by seeking validation instead of alignment, by confusing familiarity with assignment. And hear this: not everyone who can walk with you in the valley can handle you on the mountain. Some people only know how to connect to your pain, not your purpose. And when your pain no longer defines you, they don't know how to relate. And instead of adjusting, they withdraw, or they criticize, or they compete. And God says, let them go. Not with resentment, but with peace. Because holding on too tightly to what God is asking you to release will slow you down. And this is why separation often feels quiet, gradual, and awkward. Conversations fade instead of explode. Distance grows instead of drama. And that is grace, because God is removing without destroying. He is transitioning without humiliating. He is protecting without exposing. And your role in this season is simple but challenging. Don't chase what's leaving. Don't force what's fading. Don't explain what God is already clarifying, because every season has its relationships, and when a season changes, so do the relationships that belong to it, and clinging to expired connections will cost you energy meant for expansion. And this is where boundaries become holy. Saying no becomes obedience, and privacy becomes protection, because when you reduce access, you reduce noise. And when noise reduces, clarity increases, and clarity is essential for where you're going next. Because God is not just elevating you financially or professionally. He is elevating you internally, sharpening your discernment, strengthening your backbone, teaching you how to stand without leaning on familiar support, because reliance must shift from people to purpose, from approval to obedience. And this is why this season feels quieter socially, because God is recalibrating your support system, replacing crowds with clarity, popularity with purpose and proximity, with alignment and chosen one. Don't confuse fewer voices with less favor. Sometimes fewer voices means God is speaking louder, and fewer opinions means you can finally hear instruction clearly. And this is how you know separation is working. Your peace increases, your focus sharpens, your reactions soften, and your need to prove disappears. Because when you're aligned, you don't argue, you move. You don't defend, you build, and you don't explain, you obey. And this is the gift hidden inside separation. It gives you room to grow without interference, to build without pressure, and to become without distraction. And if you can honor this season, if you can let go with grace, if you can move forward without dragging the past behind you, then what God is preparing to release in the next season will not overwhelm you, because you will be carrying it lighter, clearer, and stronger than ever before. Chosen one, this is where the danger shifts, and very few people are warned about it, because the greatest threat to your calling will no longer come through lack. It will come through comfort. It will not roar like a storm. It will whisper like ease. And this is why so many people survive, struggle, but collapse in success, because when you had nothing, your faith was tested through endurance, through patience, through survival. But when abundance arrives, your faith is tested through remembrance, through stewardship, through restraint. And this is where many drift without realizing it. Not because they became evil, but because they slowly forgot the nights they cried for breakthrough, forgot the prayers they whispered when no one was listening, forgot the promises they made when all they had was faith, because comfort has a way of dulling spiritual sensitivity. It quietly replaces dependence with confidence, prayer with planning, surrender with self-reliance. And if you're not careful, your lifestyle will begin to grow louder while your soul grows quieter. And that imbalance is more dangerous than any season of lack, because abundance without awareness leads to emptiness. And this is why Scripture doesn't warn us most about poverty. It warns us about forgetfulness in blessing, because money is not just provision, it is a mirror. It reveals priorities, motives, loyalties. Money does not corrupt it, exposes. It shows you who you really trust, what you really value, and where your identity truly lives. And this is why some people get blessed and slowly drift away from the very presence that lifted them. Not because God left, but because success distracted them. Applause replaced intimacy, momentum replaced obedience, and they stopped returning to the secret place. And hear this truth clearly. If money makes you prayerless, it is not prosperity, it is bondage. If success silences your hunger for God, it is not favor. It is a trap, and God is warning you ahead of time because He wants you to pass this test, not fail it, because He did not bring you through drought to watch you drown in abundance. He did not train you in silence to lose you in noise. And this is why discipline must increase as resources increase, not decrease, because comfort breeds complacency, and complacency invites collapse, not suddenly but slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And this is how many fall, not through scandal, but through distraction. They get busy, productive, visible, but misaligned. And God is saying in this season, guard your spirit with the same intensity. You guard your finances, protect your heart more than your account. Because if your heart drifts, your blessing will follow. And this is why Jesus withdrew after miracles. He did not linger in applause. He returned to communion, because applause is loud, but purpose is quiet. And if you stay too long where people praise you, you will miss where God is trying to lead you next. And chosen one, this is where maturity is proven. Can you stay low when you could boast? Can you stay grateful when life gets easier? Can you stay obedient when options multiply? Because success will give you choices, but wisdom must filter them. Not every invitation deserves your time. Not every opportunity deserves access. Sometimes the holiest answer is no. Sometimes silence is the strongest response, because reacting feeds noise, but restraint preserves peace, and peace is proof that God is leading you. Not pressure, not urgency, not fear of missing out. And this is why remembrance must become a daily practice, returning to gratitude, returning to humility, returning to the place where it was just you and God, because remembrance is protection, gratitude is armor, humility is covering, and when you live this way, abundance cannot poison you. It will strengthen you. Wealth will not control you. It will serve you, and success will not distract you. It will fund purpose. And this is the posture of the chosen. They do not just rise, they remain. They do not just receive, they steward. They do not just succeed, they stay aligned. And this is how success becomes safe. This is how abundance becomes holy. And this is how legacy is built quietly, steadily, and unshakably. And chosen one, if this message pierced your spirit, if you feel the weight of stewardship, if you know you are being prepared to carry more than just money, more than just influence, more than just comfort, then don't just listen, respond, because alignment is a decision. So right now, I want you to comment the word remember. If you're choosing gratitude over ego, discipline over display, obedience over applause, and if you know you're in a season where God is teaching you to carry success without losing intimacy, also comment steward. Let that be your declaration that you refuse to drift, you refuse to forget, and you refuse to let blessing pull you away from the source. And if this spoke directly to you, stay connected. Subscribe to the channel, because this is not entertainment. This is preparation. And the next season of your life will require clarity, restraint, and wisdom. And chosen one, move forward, quietly. Stay anchored deeply and remember who brought you here, because the ones God trusts with increase are not the loudest. They are the most faithful, and what He places in your hands in this season will not just arrive, it will remain.